So I'm going to cover bulk scheduling, reporting. We've done a lot of work recently around reporting. So not so much in terms of additional functionality, but more about how the reporting tabs are used in terms of usability. Password reset, which was mentioned earlier, candidate review. Pete's going to talk a little bit about section times, and then I'm going to do a demonstration on administration branding, which previously wasn't done in Surpass 12, and between me and Pete we're going to cover delivery branding. Okay, so bulk scheduling, what is it? It's kind of fairly obvious. It enables a lot of candidates to be scheduled for a particular test form. When Surpass was first introduced, I think in the UI you can do an upload, which I think is capped at 50 candidates. There was a requirement from some of our universities in the Netherlands to be able to schedule more than 50 candidates. So we created a third-party application, the bulk scheduling app, which worked fine, but it was a third-party application. It sat outside of the product, so we brought it into the product, and it enables up to 1,000 candidates to be scheduled at any one time. So this is our test administration screen, and there's just a bulk schedule button you can see in the top right. So you just simply work through selecting your centre from the top, the subject, the test, and the test form. There's a pin code which is editable. You schedule the dates. You can either download a CSV file, which simply is just the candidate ref, and you just list all the candidate references, press the upload button, and then you're immediately told whether that upload has been successful, and if there are any issues or errors with it for, maybe some incorrect information has been put in, then you're told about that and you can rectify it pretty quickly. So in reporting, like I said, mainly we've changed the views and the reporting tab to make it easier to use. When we first introduced the reporting tab, it was you had to you picked an area to look at and you worked through it. To kind of move across, you had to kind of go back up. You didn't retain some of the selections you'd made. So whilst it was good in terms of the content it had, it wasn't so much easy to use. So we did some consultancy, I don't know, probably 18 months ago, I think Alpha Plus, one of our partners, looked at that. We took some feedback from them, and at last user group last year we shared some of the, I think there was a session run on the reporting where people got opportunity to feed into the mock-ups we'd had. The feedback was positive, so we've implemented that in the last year. And we're pretty pleased with what it's doing at the moment, but we're continually working on it. So I'll just take you through. So this is the reporting tab now. It opens up to the subjects page. You have a list of all the subjects on the left, and it's got various bits of information, test taken, when they were last sat. And if you just see at the top, it doesn't work. At the top left is an analytical and operational data. So we basically broke it down into two areas to look at. Analytical data is more about the items. So you want to look at item performance, how they performed over a period of time, looking at things like the difficulty of the item, its usage, etc. And then operational data, which is more about centres. So how many tests a centre has done in a period of time for a particular subject or across all subjects. Also the filtering in the top right hand corner. You're able to kind of filter on dates, centres, subjects, I think, and you can now it remembers those filters, which, like I say, some of the previous stuff it didn't. When you went from one screen to another, you had to it just wasn't as usable. So hopefully those improvements have been received. We've also introduced, like I said, the breadcrumb approach. You'll see highlighted in the top left. So you can it's easier to navigate back rather than have to go back to the beginning and start again. And then I mentioned the reporting about the centre, so this is an example of I think all centres for a period of 2015, but you can see you can filter on the centres, you can filter on the subjects, and you can change those years. Password resets, fairly self-explanatory. I think Andy kind of alluded, the problem was people, we have a lot of passwords to remember, a lot of complexity with some of them passwords, whether it's uppercase, lowercase, exclamation marks, numbers, which we're guilty of, by the way. That's a requirement for the Surpass password. But I think a lot of calls were coming through to the help desk. There was no facility to effectively change it yourself. So there's a simple can't access your account link at the bottom there. The user is prompted to enter their email address. An email is sent to them with a link they access, and then they follow the instructions. Told to enter their new password, confirm that password, and then the security question and the answer, which I think recently is causing some issues where people are forgetting what their reset question is, answer is. So we're having to look into, and that's now resulting, I believe, Gary, in quite a lot of calls to the help desk. So we're going to potentially look into improving that. So maybe, for example, site admin can do that rather than a lot of calls to be into the help desk. So the candidate review, what is it? It enables the candidate to review the test that they have sat. I think it was introduced from the Dutch universities. I think it's a regulatory requirement where every candidate who sits an on-screen summative assessment is allowed to access that test and review it. So that's why we introduced it. I believe there's a time frame where that's available. They can see feedback pending on the settings that they've got. They can see the correct answers if they got things wrong. So it's not too dissimilar to the other screens that we have in Surpass. So we put it in the administration screen. You can see the candidate review there. So on the left-hand side is a breakdown of existing reviews. On the right-hand side, some candidate information. So again, we've implemented a wizard approach that's consistent with some of the other areas of the product. So it's fairly straightforward. You just go through it, selecting the subject, the test form. You can see the various bits of information from the drop-downs. You've got the opportunity to select all candidates or individual or specific candidates. And then, like at this stage again, you can filter that out and you can schedule all available candidates. And then at the end in the settings, you're presented with, again, a passcode. So that's editable as well, so it can be set generically for all the candidates that you've scheduled for that review. So the way that the review is dealt with, it's dealt with in a similar way to a test session for candidates. So it's scheduled, they all go into a room, they all sit at their desks, they're presented with key code and the passcode. They simply enter that. First screen they're presented with is a summary of the test that they had. So this is an example of a 4-question test that we had prepared for, which I'll be demonstrating later. So you can see there I've got 2 right in section A and 2 wrong in section B. So here's an example of the question I've got right. I'm assuming most candidates aren't really interested in that. They're probably drawn to the ones that they got wrong to find out whether, they've been done a disservice or for whatever reason. So here's that example. So I obviously don't know my beer apparently, because I don't know that Heineken's Dutch. So you can see here I've selected German, which is the wrong answer. Dutch is highlighted in green as being the right answer. So again, that the candidate can then has that feedback. And there are various options as well, depending on settings that are selected in test creation, whether there's feedback shown, etc. So this is all. There are various. I've not selected the feedback comments on this particular incident. I think the question, Martin, was about whether it applies to other question types rather than just specifically multi-choice. So I think it does. I think the example I've used here is specifically around multi-choice, but in test creation you can go in and you can select to show feedback and any comments that have been, so for example, if it's a essay and the marker has written down some points within that, that would be visible with the candidate review. Okay, I'm going to hand over to Pete to talk about section times now.
Okay, so we introduced the concept of time sections. So at the moment in Surpass, you can only do is set an exam, so it can be untimed or it can be timed, so you can make it a 60-minute exam or not timed at all. So now you can set the specific times against individual sections, so you can have a 20-minute section and then a 30-minute section. So the clock will tick down for the individual feedback. It will tick down for the individual section, and you can click on the time and change it to the overall time of view as well, so the candidate can see how much time is left of the entire exam. As part of this, we've also introduced a override lockdown mode. So if you're using Secure Client and it's in lockdown mode, so you can't access like the internet and other applications, you can pick to override that one particular section if required. So you can have a research section at the start where they're allowed to use the internet, and then have it locked down for the rest of the exam, for example. We've also introduced the NDA screen, the confirmed candidate details screen, intro pages and exit pages, a concept of being able to put timers on there. So if you need to be exact about how long the maximum exam session is going to be, then you can put like a 15-minute on the candidate confirmed details screen. So here's a demonstration of where you'd set up the individual sections. So in the section properties, you put so by default, the exam is a timed exam. If you put a time in one of the sections, it will automatically change it to a time section exam, and then require you to fill in the times for all the other sections. And the checkbox at the bottom there is where you'd override to unlock this section. And then we've changed where all the exam times are held in Surpass, so that now it's got its own section at the top right of the exam version details or test form version details, and it will give a summary of all the different times that have been set. And if you have missed setting a time on one of the sections, it will say not set, and it won't let you save until you've actually added the time on that.
So I'm just going to talk a little bit about administration branding. So previously, all Surpass 12 instances were Surpass branded. We didn't offer the facility for organisations to brand it with their own colours, logos, etc. So recently that requirement came about. So this is going to provide customers with the ability to brand their own Surpass instance. So what I'll actually do is I'll just flick to show you actually how this works, rather than show you some mock-ups. Works. So we've introduced certain permissions under site settings. So we envisage this kind of being at a site admin level, and it's not something that's obviously going to be done that frequently. You know, it's a very costly process to go changing your marketing and changing your logos and your colours and your branding. So when any new customer, any existing customer will get Surpass 12, it'll be branded with Surpass. But now, when this next release comes out in the next few weeks, you'll have the opportunity to brand it yourself. So we've introduced the branding tab here. And the things you can do are the admin logo, the login branding, the login screen, and the homepage banner. So as you saw on that front screen when I just logged in, there's an image of a few people sitting a test. There's Surpass logos above the username and password. You can see in the top left of the screen, it's Surpass branded. So quite easily to there are some varying image requirements listed there, so the resolution, the file type and the file size. fairly quick to do. You'll be able to see the image has changed, the logo has changed above there. And the homepage banner should now say "Welcome to Dublin" in dodgy red, but obviously that was just to show you the difference and how quick it is to use. And like I say, that will be available in the next release coming up in the next few weeks. Okay. So as Martin mentioned there about delivery branding, so it's one thing the system being able to be branded so that the kind of people at head office, I suppose, who use it can get the look and feel of the organisation they're working in. But obviously we want to look at the candidate experience as well, so that when someone's sitting down to sit a test, they're not seeing Surpass, they're seeing either, in some cases, the provider of that test as well as the customer as well. So we've introduced the concept of what we call test profiles. So this is where you would want to set up how you want your test to look, what things you want to be associated with that particular test. So there's a button here under test creation. And again, this is all permission controlled. So again, we would envisage this being done by probably a site admin or probably quite a senior person at the organisation. So you're presented with this screen where you can create new profiles. Obviously, I'm using the alpha environment here, our development environment, so there's a lot of testing related stuff in here. You can, each one you can set to be published, which means then that is then carried through for all newly scheduled exams. You can have I mentioned before about the provider logo. So when Paul was talking this morning about Prometric might be the provider and the client might be one of their customers. So that gives the opportunity for both to be presented to the candidate when they sit down for their test.
It's worth just noting that there's a colour version and a monochrome version. The colour version is shown as standard to most candidates. If you go into colour preferences mode, it uses the monochrome version to swap out the colours. It swaps out the white for whatever's selected colour in the colour preferences mode, so you can still visually see the image.
And then you can set the colours of how you want the candidate delivery to look like. So we've got the header and the footer colours. We've got the finish button to be kind of quite clear what the candidate's doing, so that can be presented in a different colour. And then the primary buttons and the secondary buttons that are used. So that's all around once we get into the delivery, that'll be quite clear there. Then the candidate details. This was something previously, I think, the candidate name is shown, but for some organisations they don't necessarily capture all this information. I think some of our customers don't capture the date of birth, so everyone's born on the 1st of January 1900 or something to that effect. And so I don't know whether some candidates, we're asking them to confirm this is them and they're happy for all this, but there's discrepancies with the information that they've been presented with. And some organisations, they don't present whether it's gender or whatever. So the opportunity here to select or deselect certain bits of information, whatever you want that candidate to be able to see when they sit that test. And again, we'll see this in the delivery when we move into it. And then a score report is something, customisable score reports is something we're introducing in the latest release. So currently I think the score report is very much Surpass related, and it's the information that we provide. Do you want to?
Well, yeah, at the moment it's just an inbuilt PDF that gets generated on the result screen, but now we're introducing it's an HTML file which you can customise how you require, and it will have set placeholders that you can place in the HTML file, which will then get swapped out. For the initial release, we're only doing it so that you can display it to the candidate after the exam is finished, but there is work in the pipeline down the line to add this to the results so that you can actually generate it for candidates as well.
Okay, so I'm not going to go through how you change all these is similar to how I did the administration program. It was fairly straightforward. So once that kind of function's been done, you've set all the colours, the logos, etc., how you want your test to look. It's then a case about associating those profiles with the test that you're delivering. So again, we'll see the kind of the two tasks here. The one I've done before, I would say that would be probably a site admin level. This is more maybe people who use the system a bit more frequently.
So we've introduced 2 new test styles on the drop-down, 4th from the bottom, and that's at the moment it's called Surpass Flat and Surpass Flat forward only, but we have rethought the name to be...
Yeah, because basically Surpass Flat means nothing to us, to be honest. I don't know why we ended up calling it Surpass Flat. It was almost like a working title that didn't get changed. So it actually got brought up when our translation company asked us, because we deliver our system in, I think it's up to 8 languages now. We just recently introduced Spanish for European Spanish and Latin American Spanish and US English. And they asked us what Surpass Flat means, and kind of we don't really know what it means. So I think we're going to change it more to be kind of Surpass branding to clearly differentiate why it would be different to what's currently offered today.
It's only the 2 new styles that will use the delivery test profile branding, and this will only be available in release 12 and won't be available to our 11 customers.
So I've introduced a new tab called Style Profiles, and as you can see, the one I've selected here. So at the top 2 on the Surpass, the assessment platform, is the client logo, I think. Or is it provider? It's one or the other. And the BTL Learning Assessment, they're either client and provider. And then the 2 underneath it are the monochrome logos. And then you've got the header and footer, the primary button, the finish button, the secondary button, showing what it would look like to the candidate when they're sitting it.
This is just to give you a quick preview so you know you selected the right profile. Because you make individual profiles, and then when you schedule in or creating a test, you're picking which profile to use. So you could have more than one test using the same profile. And then at the bottom you've got with the reports, that's choosing whether you want the score report, customizable score report, to display at the end, or display and show a print button as well to the candidate.
So hopefully, so what I've done, prepared, rather than go through scheduling a test and all the rest of it, most of you know how to do that anyway. So this key code should hopefully work. So as you can see, all this has got is the first name, the last name, and the candidate ref. I'm a Liverpool supporter, so I tend to use quite a lot of the Liverpool players have done a lot of tests in Surpass recently. So in this particular, like I showed earlier, the only 3 things selected were first name, last name, and the candidate ref. Obviously, if there was gender and the other one, I can't remember what it was, that would be displayed on this screen. That was it, thank you.
It's worth noting that on the previous versions we had all the confirmed candidate details and the confirm the terms and conditions NDA section on the same screen. We've now separated them out, so you've got confirmed candidate details on this screen, and then on the next screen you've got the confirm NDA. That's configurable, so you can turn either off if you need to.
And this was because we had a requirement that if some candidates might be the right person, but they might not accept the terms and conditions, and Prometric in the instance wanted to be able to capture that if at any point the candidate decided, I'm not taking this out. They wanted to know at what point they decided to not continue with that test. So obviously that's why those things have been separated out. So in this box here, you said that we've got just a 2-line terms and conditions. I think some customers have lines and lines and lines and reams of information that they ask people to kind of sign up to. If that instance occurs, we simply input a scroll bar.
Because before we were limiting it to 200 characters, but we've increased that limit now. I think it's 10,000 off the top of my head. So here you've got the new style delivery engine. So if you look at the colours at the top, it's all based around those 8 sets of colours, the 4 background and 4 foreground colours that you picked as part of the test profile. So you've got the header colour at the top with the header text, and then you've got the finish button colour up there as well. Go to the next one. And again, the buttons are all depending on the values that you picked in your test profile. It's worth also noticing that we don't put any logos once you've started the test. So you've got the provider logo and the customer client logo that you can put on. You only get on the confirm candidate details screen, the confirm NDA screen, and then the view feedback at the end, which we'll see at the end of the exam.
That's another thing we've introduced as well, like in the browser on content author, item authoring, we previously didn't have the ability to add a finish page. It was always for enterprise customers using Content Producer. That was always possible, but in the browser-based approach it wasn't. So that's something else we've introduced recently, where you can put some nice messages if you want your candidates to thank you for testing with them.
And then again, this is, you see the provider, the client logo at the top right, and it's just the new style, how the feedback screen will look.
Okay, that's all we have for you today. Obviously, like Andy mentioned earlier, the kind of 1,700 odd user stories that we've done over the last 12 months. I wanted to kind of try and find a mix of things that would apply to kind of, I didn't know who was going to be, all the people that were going to be attending. So some of that section times that Pete mentioned before, that's available for all release 11.
Yeah, release 11 and 12 section time.
But the admin branding, the delivery branding is only available at the moment for Surpass 12 customers. And there's our details if anybody needs anything in the future. Okay, thanks everybody.